Burnout is worse than you think because it's only your good employees who get burnout.
Yeah, people who don't care.
Or not putting themselves into a predicament of getting burned out. Now, they might say that they're burned out, but that's a whole different problem.
That's a definition problem.
Yeah. So instead of asking about burnout, are you burned out? You have to ask, when was the last time you took a vacation? How do you feel when you come back from vacation? Do you have things outside of work that bring you meaning? And so,
do you have the energy for those things outside of work?
Right. You can't actually measure if people are burnt out
by asking them if they're burnt out.
Right.
Welcome to Management Muse.
Because everybody deserves a better manager.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi.
Yellow.
And that's my co-host, Geoffrey Tumlin.
Yellow.
Today we are talking about why burnout is worse than you think.
Naughty.
And
you
so,
want to start with an example, or you want to start with?
I'll start with maybe the doctor.
Okay.
So I was coaching somebody who was getting into trouble because they were getting so exhausted that they were not exhibiting good decision making
Right.
in their social interactions.
Cleaned this story up a lot.
Yeah, well, in talking to this person, it came out that there was nobody else who was doing what they were doing. It had been going on for
Meaning the particular type of
service.
Yeah, at the hospital.
Right. And so and that had been going on for years, and that meant that they were taking call for this for years on top of working all the time and never feeling like they could get a break. And so, they didn't really mind. They were really well, I want the right person and I care about the patients and, I know that I'm going to do it right. And so they weren't really complaining. And that's the problem is that sure, administration knew that they were down to only one person doing this particular service. And they had been looking at people, but I think that person was worried about somebody else coming in and doing less of a good job.
Yeah.
And they were so passionate about what they were doing that they didn't realize, that they were actually burning out. And because they were burning out, most likely doing not as good of a job as they should have. The example illustrates that the type of employee who's getting burnt out, which is somebody who is really actually passionate and cares a lot about the job. At least it could be they care about the organization, or it could be that they care about the profession. In this case, I think it was a little bit of both, but definitely very heavily on the profession side. So I think it's a good example for some of the things that we're going to pull out as talking points for things that cause burnout.
Yeah. Burnout is worse than you think because it's only your good employees who get burnout.
Yeah, people who don't care.
Or not putting themselves into a predicament of getting burned out. Now, they might say that they're burned out, but that's a whole different problem.
That's a definition problem.
Yeah. So instead of asking about burnout, are you burned out? You have to ask, when was the last time you took a vacation? How do you feel when you come back from vacation? Do you have things outside of work that bring you meaning? And so,
do you have the energy for those things outside of work?
Right. You can't actually measure if people are burnt out
by asking them if they're burnt out.
Right. Because anybody who didn't sleep 8 hours last night is going to say yes. Because they're conflating, I'm tired today with I'm burnt out, or I'm bored, or I wish I got promoted. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that people screw up if you ask them directly. Or it's not screw up, it's that they give you false positives. And so when we measure that, as an example, just for a minute, the physicians, many physicians will come up on this measure in the danger zone for a burnout measure because the question is basically, are you checking your messages when you're off? And they say yes.
And it's the same problem. It's because they don't, well, one, they don't want to get inundated when they get back, but two, they don't actually trust anybody else to take care of their patients the way they take care of their patients, which that is somebody who is very passionate about what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. These are great employees, great physicians, people who care about the work. And they're the ones most likely to actually push themselves to the point of burnout. Sometimes we talk about burnout as having a kind of 3-step. It takes kind of 3 steps to get there, where in step 1, you're tired. But if you're only tired and you get a break or a weekend off and a little bit of time to recover, you're back after a day or 2 off and you're better. Well, that's not burnout. That's just tired. And then there's a step after that where you've pushed it maybe for a period of time and you get a weekend off and you come back and you're still tired. I mean, I think famously of your mom who took care of your dad. My mother-in-law took care of Cindy's dad for
9 years.
9 years, and he was paralyzed from a hemorrhagic stroke. And when your dad passed away after a period of time, we asked your mom, hey, you want to take you on vacation somewhere? And we took her to Maui, which is where she wanted to go, always wanted to go to Hawaii. And she fell asleep during the luau. She fell asleep at the gardens.
She fell asleep every time we put her in the car.
Yeah. Once I was actually talking to her and she fell asleep, which reminded me of all my time teaching college.
That's humbling.
So that's kind of the step 2 of a few days off. In this case, we were with her for 8 or 9 days and she was still tired. And so we call that that's exhaustion. That's more than being tired. Now you're exhausted, but you're still not burnout. Kind of the warning signs of burnout is that you no longer want to do the things you used to love to do, or said more strictly, you lose your intrinsic or internal motivation. And so your mom, what were some of the things you would say she loved to do? Feed squirrels?
Oh, yeah. I don't think she's ever...
Never lost that?
I don't think she's ever lost that.
For the dog?
Any wild animal that comes along, including possums through the
Feed
doggy
the
door.
squirrels, feed the possums.
Yep.
Cook food for the dogs in a skillet. And she never, which is crazy. It looked so good. The first time I saw it, I thought it was...
My brother ate it the first time she did it.
Thought it was dinner. And so she never lost she never lost the desire to do that. And so in that instance, she never got burnt out taking care of your dad.
She definitely was exhausted.
But she definitely was more than tired and got into exhaustion. And the piece that you mentioned before that, again, I think is the central point of this episode is people only get burnt out on things that they're deeply committed to. Your mom was deeply committed to. I once tried to give her a compliment so many years into this about, hey, I think it's really great that you're taking care of your husband and she didn't understand the compliment. She basically was like, well, what, something to the effect of, she was nice about it, but like, well, what do you expect me to do? This is my husband. Of course, this is what I'm doing.
That's exactly right.
And
there's no other option.
Right. And this is the paradox of burnout, is that those kinds of people, your employees like that, the physicians that are deeply committed to the work, your employees that love the company, love the organization, they're the ones most likely to push themselves past tired, past exhaustion, and into burnout. And I can't think of, in 19 years of us doing this work, a single time an average employee has been burnt
it
out.
makes sense, right? Like, the thing is that when you are really committed to the job, you look at it like you don't have any of these physicians who are checking their emails and taking phone calls while they're on vacation.
Yeah.
They don't think they have any other choice. This is actually how you take care of people.
Yeah.
Even though like the whole point of being part of an organization is to have other people who can, obviously it's going to be the right people, but other people who can pitch in and take some of the load. So like there should be some degree of feeling comfortable with sharing a load with each other.
Yeah.
But what we tend to find is that the people who are, really highly identified either with the profession or the organization, just depends, not everybody has like a profession that they identify with. But in the case of doctors, they usually do.
Yeah, sure.
And so to the degree that they perceive that their care is better than everybody else's, probably because they're perfectionists or just really feel like they have a very high standard, they're not going to be comfortable. handing it off. And
Yeah.
and they will feel like there is no other choice. And as long as you feel like there's no other choice,
You keep pushing.
yeah. And you are actually, to some degree, lying to yourself too. I mean, lying's like kind of a harsh way of saying it. You're so goal focused, so narrowly focused, you don't see yourself in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I was thinking about the time we'd done your survey and a bunch of physicians were lighting it up as, possible burnout. And so I went to talk with them.
Again, it's measures that don't say burnout.
Right. Are you getting real breaks? Are you able to?
Do you have energy at the end of the day?
Yeah. Do you feel recharged when you come back from your time off? Or you feel like you're able to use your time off? Are you checking your messages when you're off? Stuff like that. And they were lighting it up as problematic on a lot of these. And so I talked to them, and the group of them, it was probably about 10 or 11, said basically, they were nice about it, but they basically said, leave me alone. This is how I practice medicine. And as long as you ask me these questions, I'm going to be telling you, yes, I'm checking my email. Yes, when I'm off, I'm doing this work, because that is how I do this job. And so it's challenging if you're a manager and you have people. I know this sounds so odd, but you have to keep an eye on your people who are that deeply committed.
And they're exactly the people you don't actually pay attention to, because these are the people who your high performers. These are the people who get the work done. And typically they're exactly who managers ignore because they don't have to worry about them.
Right. And then it can leak out in other stuff. So this guy started making, PG-13 jokes, started yelling at people. And so Cindy's called in to counsel, to basically try to correct.
I was the last hope.
Yeah, these abnormal behaviors. And it wasn't that he'd suddenly become unable to tell between an okay joke and an off-color joke. The problem was that he went from exhaustion to actual burnout.
And lost his ability to monitor himself. And so,
yeah.
He just basically became more impulsive.
Yeah, lost his, I would say, you say ability, and I agree with that. I would also, you could frame it as he lost his desire to monitor. Like, I don't care anymore. At that part of burnout, you've pushed so much that I don't know the mechanism. I don't know how much of this is your body is starting to try to protect you.
Oh, I think it's definitely like the body deciding that it's putting more energy into the thing that is most important, and there's no energy left over. And so everything else is falling away, which is that's why you're losing all the interest in everything else in your life, because you basically have a limited amount of energy, and so you're putting it into this thing.
Yeah, I've depleted myself. I have less and less of the energy. I have to put it all on. I have to put it all on this one thing.
That's the most important thing to me, in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you ask people, they would probably be like family, because almost universally that's what people say, and I think they mean it. But we all expect that family is going to do some sucking up for us. Family often doesn't get the best versions of us. Right.
And to be clear, we see a fair amount of burnout cases, but not a ton. This isn't widespread, but if you survey this will be the last time I say this.
The problem is that where it is so important to your organization. Yep. It's actually the people. Yep. Like if we do the 80-20 rule, this is the 20% of your people who are making your organization work.
Right. It's a tiny number of your organization who may actually be burnout, and be able to actually burn out, because the vast majority of your organization aren't that committed, and they're going to stop themselves and put in hard stops. I am taking my vacation. I'm not answering my phone. I'm not responding to your email. And they're going to...
And they may be good enough employees, but they're not...
They're not this percentage of people prone to burnout who are throwing themselves into the work.
And it's all a package, right? So the people who care and are passionate the most they're also like they're burning out, but while they're burning out, they're also shedding all these other identities.
Right.
And so they're really becoming one-dimensional, which is making them very fragile.
Right. The scientific term for that is multiple role theory, which is just basically the more things you do, the less
that you're actively engaged in, the roles that you're actively engaged in. So it's family, it's
I'm a
church, it's
grandmother,
hobbies.
I'm
it's
a deacon.
Right.
I'm a pickleball player, which I'm not, but
No.
but yeah, the more things you have, the harder it is for any one identity to take over.
Well, it's just that you bounce back. So
Yeah.
when you have more identities and you have a bad day at work, you can engage with people in these other groups and you have something in common, and like that makes you feel seen and valued, and presumably they also enjoy your company because you're doing something that you all like and you're similar. And so it's a way to take the dents out.
Yeah.
And
good way of putting it.
And I mean, if you're doing hard things, which typically these, people who are very passionate and get to the point where they're doing hard things, you're going to have bad days. And you're also like, even if you're not doing hard things, you're going to have bad days at work anyway, because people can be in a funk and they can take it out on you. And then you're having a bad day too.
Sure. I was thinking about your favorite whipping boy. Cindi hates nonprofits that punish their employees.
Yeah, you're already getting a tax break. Pay your employees a fair wage, people.
Right. Cindy's point about nonprofits is that basically, I mean, just to use an example, if it's a cuddly animal nonprofit, that you can hire people at a fraction of the price because they love cuddly animals so much. I'm saving the whales. I'm doing whatever. Hey, let me pay you a fraction of what
I would have to pay if I were not a nonprofit.
And then let's have you work weekends and be fielding calls because this is so important to be saving these whales or whatever. And
the worst is if you're a volunteer. They don't.
Well, yeah, for sure. But I don't think a volunteer is ever going to burn out.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But just in terms of treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this paradoxical idea of the things that we love and throw ourselves into, the people throwing themselves into their work are the only ones who burn out.
So if we are thinking about either for ourselves or the people who are working for us, what can we do? What is it about burnout that we can sort of unwind?
Yeah. It's kind of control and seeing some results from what you're doing.
Right.
That both of those things seem to help people with their burnout. If you return back to the doctors briefly, there's just recently 11,000 doctors across the world surveyed, and the most unhappy and the highest paid are in America. And that's a function in part of there's just a lot less control physicians have in America than they used to.
Right. So there's a comparison. They had what they had before, and now they have a lot of constraints on how they practice.
A lot of bureaucracy, a lot more messages coming into them since COVID.
Presumably that part would go away with the younger generation who's coming into a situation where it's just how you practice.
The comparison part, yes, but the ability to feel like you're in control, no.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
But we need to separate that out.
Right. If you're a manager listening to this and you want to try to do something, you're looking at where in the work that my people are doing can I give them more control over the work? That's the micro. But also, how can we show progress faster? Or even if we can't show progress, at least give praise for we're on the way.
Right.
I think about professions with a very high turnover rate, like teachers. I wonder how much of the teacher turnover, and we're not experts in teacher turnover, but it seems like, especially if you're working at a place where you're not seeing the progress of the students.
It's very hard to see progress of students because, I remember a stat that, after a 90-minute class, people basically retain 17% of what you teach. Like
Yeah.
you never know in a room who
Right.
at any one moment is actually paying attention, because about every 15 minutes, everybody is clicking off,
Yeah.
And
Sure.
it's just the way that the brain works. And so teaching is really hard to feel like you're making an impact, because you don't know what single thing you said is going to stick to anybody. And then it will only be a percentage in the
Right.
room.
Every field that we're in has some burnout in it. I can think about people get burnout in the Army. During the 9/11 era, there was a huge departure of very senior people who don't normally leave, just throwing their pension away. Basically, if you go for 20 years, you get a beautiful pension, lifetime health care. And so the general conventional wisdom is that anybody who's gone 11 years stays for 20. And so there's no exit of people who from like year 12 to year 19, nobody leaves.
Yeah.
And in the post 9/11 era, you had an exodus of people with 14, 15, and 16 years.
Which that's crazy. 16 years. I can't imagine.
And that never happens. I mean, there was a certain rank of the, on the officer side, the majors, the fourth level of officer in the Army, they were leaving. And like, this can't happen. How does this happen? And it was both of the things that we're talking about. I mean, everybody's decision is certainly has an individual component, but the big, broad reasons were: reason one, too many deployments, going too fast. It was we were trying to have a lean force, but then we had all these commitments. And so you were throwing people into what seemed to them to be almost back-to-back deployments, some of them up to a year in length. And that's too much. On the one hand, you can actually burn people out in the ways we've been talking about. And then the other piece was that the Army itself is highly bureaucratic and rule-bound. But during combat, it's not. It's a lot of those were loosened. And so a few very perceptive people realized the same thing that you just brought up, is we can't take these people who we send them overseas at great sacrifice of their own and let them do the job without the bureaucracy getting in the way, and then bring them back from that and subject them to the same bureaucratic rules that most people hate anyway. Like, you can't.
Everybody hates paperwork.
And there was a small movement, I don't know that it really got anywhere, but to not have the people who just given so much overseas have to come back and just bury their head in the busy work.
That is interesting. It's also that's interesting from the perspective that, like, they go from having some control, which also has a lot to do with just it being chaotic, right? Like, when you're actually in the fight, there's a lot of chaos, which means you actually have a lot of control.
Yeah, and there was a lot of early on, in addition,
right?
Like, hey, this is your sector, and you're handing a 20-year-old, like, here's 15 square miles. Like, basically, you're the mayor. Figure out what the people need, and your bosses, they can't micromanage you because they're the governor, right? And so there's that, just as you said, all of a sudden throughout the structure, everybody has control.
Until you go back and then you don't.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a comparison issue too. We do see it sometimes, like in fire departments, we sometimes see this where, there's not enough of, like, why do people get into fire departments? They want to fight fires. And the truth is that, like, we hardly have any fires. And so
in our part of our part of America, in Texas.
Right. But generally speaking, there aren't a lot of fires.
And a fire department is not fighting wildland. That's a specialty.
Yeah, right. And so you have these people who are going into the profession because they have a passion, and they're getting trained for it. because you have
Sure.
you have to have
Know
people
how
who
to
are
do it.
trained for it when it does happen.
Yeah.
But mostly they're just responding to like medical
Correct.
emergencies.
Yeah.
And so they never actually get to their passion. And that's essentially what you're describing with people who are coming back from combat. They basically are not only do they have the comparison of this is what it's like,
Right.
but they now see it, like even if the combat never happened, they would still probably exit. They might not be burnt out, but they would exit because they never actually got to the thing that they wanted to do.
Yeah. We're describing an almost perfect burnout storm. And it was only a period of time, right? This only lasted for 4 or 5 years, but it did decimate, or I mean, that may be a bit extreme, but it was so gargantuan.
Well, it was that there was no buffer.
Right.
It already shrunk everything
Yes.
down to the bare minimum, and then you had this unexpected
Loss.
outcome
Right.
where people were exiting. Like you said, you don't expect majors to exit
To leave.
because generally speaking,
They
as you
don't.
rise up the ranks, you are getting more control.
Yes.
But
True.
in this situation, you get control, you get a whole lot more control, and then you get it yanked back.
And they were burned out.
Right.
And yeah, it was so significant that the Army actually promoted captains, all of them, a year early, at least 1 year, maybe multiple, which is, I mean, that's like unheard of. I've never heard of it, and I'm 50-something years old. I mean, they may have done it. I don't know when else they would have done it. I'm sure they did something like this in World War II.
I think, maybe any of the wars where they were
Right, where there was a true, let me use the word crisis, but here we're talking about this unusual topic of burnout and then its affliction on the people who your organization relies on the most.
Let's talk about things that managers can do to help themselves and employees with burnout.
I would say the biggest one is to keep an eye on people's use of time off. And I think the two biggest things managers can do is, number one, never let people sell their time back. Make them take it and keep an eye on, is your balance building up? People don't take this seriously.
Right.
People in organizations, the leaders don't, vacation is treated like, well, it's your benefits. Okay, we know that this is important, but
Well, I think it's actually in some places, and I think we have to call this out because if you are trying to be a good manager, you need to keep this in your head. There are some managers who actually really get upset when you take your time off.
Yeah.
And that is screwed up
Sure.
because you are sending the signal that somebody can't take their breaks. But like that was the deal. You made a deal with them. They get their time off.
Yeah. As it relates to burnout, you're exactly right. I mean, in general, organizations don't treat people taking vacation like it's as important as the profit and loss, as it's important as the operations. And if you're not careful, it's going to set you up for all kinds of potential distortions. Everybody wanted to take the time off at the same time. That's one. A certain number of people hoarding their vacation for money. If you let them pay it out, that's another. And then cases of where groups of people believe that the work that they're doing is so important that they're restricting the use of that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you can't easily take, I need to take actually 10 days. Well, you can't. We're only taking 5 days. Well, why? Why is something so important that this person can't take 10 days off?
Right. Because I just want to emphasize this. Organizations are supposed to be built. We should care about our people for sure.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to be built to last beyond us, which means nobody should be so important that they can't take 10 days off.
Right. I mean, there's a certain degree of organizations lean themselves out a little bit too much, and that's probably true. But the bigger point is that we think we're far more important than we are. And if you're a manager, that a particular person is far more important than they are. they need the breaks sometimes to be a little bit longer of duration, depending on what they need to do. A lot of places we work have employees whose family is, a world away.
Mm-hmm. And it's very expensive to get to them. And so when they go,
Right.
they go for like a month.
Yep. And guess what? The place still works. Yeah. And so treating your PTO system like it's actually a vital part of your operations would be a big help to take it more seriously. That would be the first thing. And the second thing is, in our experience, being on call is the Antichrist. I've never been in any organization where their on-call policy wasn't a productivity killer.
I think that what people don't realize with call and why it's tossed around so easily is you don't actually get proper sleep because you're on.
Right.
Like a long time ago, I heard this story about ducks. I don't know if it's true or not, but ducks swim in a circle and the outer, and when they go to sleep, they swim in a circle and the inside ducks, their brain is different than the outside ducks. So the inside ducks, the brain actually shuts off and gets into full sleep. The outside ducks, they're actually only partially asleep. They're paying attention to any sound that might be coming that would threaten the whole group.
Yeah.
And I think, although I've never seen a study on this on humans, I think humans do the same thing. And I say this because of just, my own experience. When I'm going to sleep and I'm listening for somebody, I'm waiting maybe for you to come home, or like I'm by myself and so I'm on a higher alert, or I'm in a hotel room, and there are studies on hotel rooms that people do not get good sleep. And I think this is the reason, because there are all sorts of sounds that basically trigger you. You're in a new place. And so your brain doesn't actually shut off all the way.
Sure.
And so these people on call, yeah, they in theory might not actually get a phone call very frequently, but they're going to bed with the intent and the fear that they won't hear their phone ring.
Yeah.
And so they're not getting all the way to sleep. You cannot convince me. I know we could actually do this empirically and do a study on it, but I know enough from being a human being that there's no way that these people are actually getting enough sleep. And so you've got that going on the call, but then you also have just that increased, more of your control is actually stripped away.
Yeah.
Because even when you're on break, you can't leave.
Right.
You got to be within 15 minutes of the place. And even if you didn't want to go anywhere, that's increasing your sense that you have no control, which is exactly what contributes to burnout.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you'll permit me to exaggerate to make a point, we confidentially talk to employees all day long. I'm willing to say call is destroying your people. And if any of your people are on call and the phone actually rings off hours, that is corrosive to those people's quality of life, their productivity, and it absolutely ricochets into their frustration. And if goes on long enough, their hatred, if you'll let me use the word, of the company.
So here's a story for you. So when I was growing up, my parents were running multiple businesses out of their house on one single phone line. And this is the era of landlines where there's one phone in the house, one line.
That's good for me to have all them boys calling.
Yeah, they couldn't get through.
Couldn't get through.
And our phone rang
I bet.
all the time. And my mom would be so sick of answering the phone that even though 95% of the time
money
it's going to be
in
for her,
right,
she would make me stop doing my homework and get up and answer the phone to just have to call her to it.
Yep.
And I hated the phone.
Yep.
For years, anytime the phone would ring, just rage would pull up on me. Because what is that? you have no control. It's somebody reaching in and they're deciding
Yep.
that your life has to stop because they decided to call you.
Yep.
And so, again, the call is totally hitting on somebody's personal sense of control.
Yep. Yeah. It's like our friend Sparky is a property manager. And every so often he has to be the property manager on call. And he will take the property manager phone surfing.
Yeah,
he actually dropped it in the
That didn't
Pacific
work out so well.
Ocean.
Yeah, he did.
But it will ring and he'll say, "What is your emergency?"
Yeah, he'll be mad.
He's mad. And this is
Not high customer service.
no,
work.
but it's normal behavior. Yeah. I mean, look, I know it's an exaggeration, but if you're listening to this podcast and your company has a call policy, it is destroying your people. And we are hearing it. Some of our trips are funded by your call policy because your employees hate it, and that's what they're burning up our ears talking about. And so look very carefully at, do you actually need call, or could you hire out somebody else to answer those phones?
Or can you just spread it out so much where it's having a very limited.
Much. Like, here, I'll give you an example. How limited should your call be? Maybe 2 days a month. But we work in places where the employees are on call a week at a time, every month. And it's, or worse, but basically. I mean,
and then they just dread that week.
Yeah. I think you could tolerate about 2 days out of 30 on call. And because these phones ring at 2 or 3 in the morning, they're not getting the good sleep. They're still working the next day, and so on and so forth. It's the Antichrist. I mean, I could devote not only an entire podcast episode to the destructive nature of being on call and what it does to people and companies, but I could do a whole podcast. Like, that could be the whole podcast.
Well, and I got to think you're not even getting like very good responses because like you're not getting the full human being.
Right. Everything is
showing
backwards.
up.
Everything is backwards about this when you're calling people in at 2 in the morning or asking them to troubleshoot,
Right. And then the poor little nurse who knows that she needs to call. Like
Right.
they do everything to not call.
Not call.
And
Right. The patient
sometimes
is
that decision
hemorrhaging.
is terrible.
Right. I don't want to wake the doctor up.
Right.
I'm trying to, again, I literally could go forever, but I'm ready to kind of wrap this thing up. But it's the whole absurdity of this on-call policy is that once you put humans into it, they're going to try to make this thing humane.
And they also don't want to be seen as not being able to handle things.
Right. So you're the leader of a hospital. You put an on-call policy where there's always a physician on call. And then the nurses at 2 in the morning don't want to call because they know that the physician is sleeping and they know that the physician stayed late. So you, the leader, are sleeping great at night because you have an on-call policy. But it's so painful and everybody else knows it that they're not actually using it when they need to. And so I got to stop talking or I will go forever. But it's back to this. I'll bet you if you show me somebody burn out, to your point, it's always going to be somebody who deeply cares about the organization, because people who do not allow themselves to get burnt out. And I'll bet you $100 that in 50% of the cases, there's some kind of on-call policy behind this or a screwed up time off policy.
Okay. I think that we are going to wrap it up on that note.
All right, do it.
Thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. If you made it this far,
you better have made it this far.
Then
we need people bouncing out on a TikTok.
Well, that's true.
Unless you're on TikTok, in which case,
and then you're the perfect
cat
spot.
video coming up.
Yeah, cat video next. But if you've made it this far, we presume that you found this valuable, and so please subscribe.
Right. Doesn't cost you anything, but does a lot for us.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to grab your copy of the Uncertainty Playbook. And if you'd like to stay connected, sign up for our newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast / YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Sarah and Rebecca. And then just as a last minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.